Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Picture Book Summit podcast. Today we have an episode for you on our Picture Book Summit Roundtable, and we're going to be talking about submissions. And one of the things with Picture Book Summit, our yearly writers conference just for picture book writers, is we've always been able to offer a submission opportunity. And so today we want to talk a little bit about how you can prepare to submit to agents and editors after a conference. In the past, we've done pitch submissions, and sometimes that's the opportunity that's available. This year, 2025, we're offering a manuscript submission. So that's a great way to get your manuscript in front of an agent or editor who might not be open for general submissions. And that's becoming more and more prevalent, unfortunately. So, taking advantage of that Summit Plus submission ticket is a great way to get your work in front of people who might not see it. And because we offer panels where you get to find out even more about each individual and what they're looking for, it's a really unique opportunity to tailor your submission to the person that you're sending it to. So I have Julie and Emma with me today, and they are our submissions experts, and they're going to give you some tips as to what you could do to be prepared for that submission opportunity and make the most of it. So, Emma, what do you think is the number one thing a writer needs to do to be prepared for a submissions opportunity?
Oh boy, the number one thing, Kelly, well, I'm going to say there are two things. I'll tackle one of them and maybe Julie, you can tackle the other one. Obviously, the number one most important component of a submission package, besides having a stellar manuscript, is the query. And you need to have a really, really polished query that does multiple things, but you also need to know who you're submitting to and do your research and target your submission accordingly. So I'll talk a little bit about the query, and then maybe Julie, you could talk a little bit about targeting. The job of the query, for anybody who's new to submitting, the query has several jobs, and you think of the query as kind of like a cover letter. Its job is to introduce you and your manuscript to the agent or editor in question. It's also to introduce your story or to hook their interest in your story. What you're really trying to do is to capture the agent or editor's interest in your story, not by revealing the entire story, not by giving them a straight up plot synopsis or a summary and telling them everything about it, but by just teasing enough information in an engaging way that they get super curious and want to read the manuscript. Right? That's the main focus of the query. And then of course the other component of the query, the other two components of the query are to show that you understand where your manuscript fits in the marketplace, that you are a professional and you have some industry savvy. And the way we do that is through the use of comp titles, comparable titles that are books like ours in tone or subject matter and so forth. And then, of course, there's the component that is about just introducing you as a writer and giving the agent or editor a taste of why they should want to invest in you. So it's a tall order. It's a lot to accomplish in a single page. And we want to keep it to a single page because these are picture books. And we certainly want to show that we understand writing with economy, and we don't want a query to be longer than our manuscript itself in word count. So it's a real art form, and it's a really important skill to develop to really know how to pitch your manuscript and frame yourself as an author and where and how your manuscript fits in the marketplace in such a way as to feel fresh and make the agent or editor who reads hundreds, if not thousands of these a week, sit up and take notice and want to read your manuscript. So that's probably the single most important component that I would focus on is really thinking about your pitch and your query and in the submission process, and is it doing the heavy lifting of all of those things for you as well as it could be? What I should also say, while we're talking about querying and how important that is in terms of the submissions process, is that more and more these days, submissions are made via submissions form, whether that's Query Manager or Submittable or some other digital form platform. And so in those cases, what happens is the query gets broken up and you get to put your pitch in one part of the form and you get to put your bio in another part of the form and your comps in yet another part of the form, but you need to have the whole to pull from. And that will be the case for the Picture Book Summit submissions this year. It'll all be happening through form. You'll have a place to put your pitch, and then you'll have a place to link your manuscript and so forth.
And that's just another reason to be sure each one of those components is polished and really
Exactly.
stands out on its own.
Exactly. Yeah. So once you have a really, really polished query, then it's easy to section the parts out to know, this is how I can input my pitch and this is how I can input my bio paragraph and so forth.
Right, right. And so, Emma, you talked about targeting your query or your pitch. And one of the great things about the summit submission opportunities is that we've done a little bit of the targeting for you in that, but all of the 4 editors and the 3 agents who will be accepting submissions are on panel discussions. So you'll get to hear them talk about what they're looking for in submissions. So it should make it easier for you to target them. And by that, we mean, are they a good fit for your work and how? And how did typically you would also include like how you came to query them, right? In this case, if you have the Summit Plus submissions ticket, it's going to be, I'm an attendee at Picture Book Summit. But in the absence of that, what you would want to do is say, I read in, this blog that you're looking for quirky characters with a fresh take on STEM topics or whatever the case may be. But you don't want to just send, dear agent, here's my manuscript, here's my pitch. You want them to know why you've selected them, why you've chosen to submit to them, and why you believe that your work is a good fit for them. And what that entails is doing some research. You don't just cold query an agent. You want to know, okay, what are they looking for? What types of books have their clients published? What type of agency are they with? Are they editorial? Are they, a big name agent, or are they a newer agent within an agency? Those are all things that you want to know. You want to decide ahead of time what you're looking for. And then as you're doing your research, you're looking for agents who fit that profile, right? And then you communicate to the agent when you're submitting to them, here's why my work is a good fit for you. And it comes in the form of, I'm pleased to submit my lyrical book about ponds in spring because I know you're looking for nature, poetic nature books, or whatever the case may be, right? At Picture Book Summit, of course, you will get a lot of that research just by attending because the agents and editors will tell you in our pre-recorded panels what they're looking for. So that'll make it a little easier. And then you'll get to decide whether they're a good fit for you. And if so, you'll have the submission opportunity to send, like Emma said, we have a special form and you'll put your query letter components in there.
I wouldn't wait until Picture Book Summit to do a little bit of investigative research into these agents and editors. You can already see who they are on our website, and you can go follow them on social media or read some interviews with them or, do a little bit of investigative research yourself because everybody has heard us say before in the complete picture book submission system that Julie and I created and run, we are constantly advocating that, a serious writer needs to have at least 3 submission-ready manuscripts before you start querying,
And I
before
was
you
going to
start
ask you, Emma,
submitting.
why is that? We get that question and we put that in our Picture Book Summit submissions guidelines.
Right,
And then
exactly.
people ask, well, do I have to have 3 or 4 ready? And so I would love for you guys to speak to why we feel like that's necessary. And is it the same with agents and editors?
Well, there are 2 main reasons why we really recommend that. The first one is that the first thing an agent is going to ask if they're interested in your work is what else you have. They will want to see more than one manuscript because, and this is the second reason, they are interested in representing you as a writer and your career, not just one book. They want to know that you're not just a one book wonder. You're not just writing this one picture book because you love your grandchildren and you want to write a story for them. There's the potential for more work there for them in representing your career. It's a little bit different with editors. Editors might be more inclined to take a chance on a one-off than an agent. An agent is more invested in representing a career, whereas an editor might be more willing to just think in terms of one book at a time. But even editors, I would venture to say, are, if that project goes well, will want the first right of refusal on your next project. So it's a really good idea to have if you are an aspiring author professionally, to have at least 3 submission ready manuscripts so that when that call comes or that email comes saying, I'm really interested in this, what else do you have? You're not scrambling. You're ready to respond quickly and professionally and show off your best self.
For our illustrators out there too, I just want to clarify that that would mean one full dummy ready, and a dummy would be a sketch dummy with 1 or 2 full color illustrations. And then you could have a couple of other manuscripts. You don't have to have 3 or 4 complete dummies ready,
Right, right. But
because
definitely a portfolio. They want to
but
be able to
what
see
you
you can carry a character from the end of the book from the beginning of the book to the end of the book.
yeah, so just know that for those of you who illustrate, because it is a lot of work to prepare those dummies, you need 1 complete dummy and then a couple of other manuscripts, but a portfolio or even just a dummy and a comprehensive portfolio would probably be okay.
Julie, I was going to ask because you were talking about targeting. So on the summit and a Summit Plus submissions ticket, we generally have anywhere from 5 to 7 submission opportunities, depending on the year and the opportunities that are offered to us. Would you suggest somebody sending the same manuscript to each person, or how would they decide which one to send?
That's a great question. And this is another reason why it's awesome to have more than 1 submission ready manuscript, because then you can target your submission, and by that I mean which manuscript you're going to send to the agent or editor that you think is the best fit for that work. So if you have, I'll just use myself as an example, if you have like a funny, punny, wordplay, humorous book, you might decide to send that to these 2 editors and that 1 agent because they are drawn to humor and wordplay. But if you also have a lyrical picture book biography, you might send that to the agents or editors who have said that they're really interested in nonfiction. So
Right.
that's where the research comes in. And not every author or illustrator writes so widely. You know, you might have 2 funny, punny picture books. That's fine too. But maybe there's something in an agent's profile that you learn about them either through the summit or through your own research that gives you the sense that one of those humorous manuscripts would be a better fit for them. For example, if you learn that an agent has, 4 dogs or something, and one of your funny manuscripts is a dog book, then that would be the one,
Right,
that
right.
you would choose. If you have a choice between, I wrote this book about a cat and this book about a dog, you're going to send the dog book. So that's part of what targeting means. It's doing your research, it's knowing what you want
Mhm.
in that agent or editor relationship, and then going out and finding people that you think would be a good fit and telling them why, and it's just a few sentences or a couple of sentences that would just explain. But agents want to know that you're thoughtful. Emma said in the beginning that you really need to be professional and polished. And part of being professional and polished is knowing yourself and knowing why you think that this would be a good partnership, because that's what it is
Right.
in the end, is a partnership.
And I'm so glad you said that, because I think many people starting out, you're writing in the cracks, or you're writing early morning, or you're like trying, and maybe people in your life don't take you as seriously as you take your writing. And so it can maybe feel like a hobby or a side thing or just something you do because you like it. But when you start to put your work out there and really develop your work, you need to know that this industry is going to take you seriously. If you take yourself seriously, they're going to take you seriously. So it is really important to be professional. And so, Emma, I have a question for you about that query letter too, because this is a question we get quite often when people are starting out. You mentioned that bio paragraph. So, what is it you put in that bio paragraph if you don't have publishing credits?
That's a really good question. So the first thing to know is not to be embarrassed about not having publishing credits, because the truth is agents love nothing more than to, and editors love nothing more than to discover a writer, right? When they get to be the person who says, I found this great writer and I helped launch their career, that's a thrill to them. So never be embarrassed about not having publishing credits. What you want to include in your bio is, obviously, if you have any publishing credits, especially if they're relevant and specific to publishing for children, you want to include those, as well as any honors or accolades, any awards or contests that you may have won or done well in, and so forth. But you also, if you have an education background that is either specific to writing or writing adjacent, such as English or journalism, or if you have a background in anything to do with children, if you're a teacher, a librarian, anything, you specialize in child development, these are all really relevant forms of experience when it comes to writing for kids. So very quickly, what you want to include is any publishing experience you may or may not have, any honors or accolades, any educational experience, if relevant to writing or to children or to your subject, any area of expertise. If your book is about firemen and you are a volunteer firefighter, that's certainly something you would want to include. Any specific expertise that is relevant to the topic of your book. And what am I leaving out? Just add that. I know what I'm leaving out. And any paid memberships in writing organizations. So if you are a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, if you're a member of 12 by 12, these are things you want to include. You don't need to mention that you're a part of a critique group. That is a given these days. People expect that. Agents and editors expect that you do your homework and you are going to participate in workshops and conferences and so forth. So really focus any kind of educational experience to do with writing on paid memberships or degrees that are specific to writing or your area of expertise or working with children. It's
But don't
really
include that your kids, grandkids, students like your manuscript.
No, 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 no. Absolutely. That's a really good point, Kelly. You think about your, again, it's all about professionalism, guys, right? 1 to 3 sentences in your bio paragraph is plenty, and keep it absolutely professional to those things I mentioned. So don't feel like you have to pad it out with things like, my kids or my grandkids or my students loved this book, or I read it at my library group, or, whatever you do. You don't have to fill in gaps. You don't add fat where there doesn't need to be any. You're better off being professional and brief than wordy and padding your bio in any way. Because what will happen is the agent or editor will assume that your manuscript is equally full of fat.
Mm.
So,
Oh my gosh, that's a great point.
yeah,
I didn't even
so,
think about that.
remember that, whatever you put into your pitch and into your bio paragraph and so forth is telegraphing your writing ability and communicating a great deal about how you write and the kind of person you are and so forth. And so that's their first introduction. It's their handshake with meeting you and your work before they actually get to read your manuscript. So you want to put
That
your best foot forward.
I want to add too, and this is going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into
Mm.
Picture Book Summit because I moderated the agent panel, which,
Oh,
by the way, these agents critiqued query letters. So if you're really interested in what agents actually think of real query letters that are submitted to them, this is your chance because we had early attendees submit queries and then the agents critiqued those actual query letters. But one of the things I think people forget is that the most important part of your query is the pitch. That's where you're selling your book. So if you have this long bio after that goes on and has information that's not relevant to your book, by the time the agent finishes the query, they've forgotten. That was one of the things that one of the agents said is, I want to be left with the essence of your book. So if you're spending, 2 paragraphs talking about yourself, you're selling yourself instead of your book. That's going to be the thing that you're leaving the agent with, as
that's
opposed to
interesting.
yeah, I thought that was very interesting because remember, people tend to remember most
Yeah,
the thing that they've come across more recently. And because the bio appears, at the end of the query, you just want to keep it really sharp, short, and simple. The
And the
three,
same is true of the comp paragraphs, because
right?
if you give them too much there, you're selling somebody else's book instead
Mm,
of your own. So again, the most important piece is the pitch. If you're going to polish anything, polish that, because that's the single most important component of the.
okay, so Emma, you brought up comps, so this is your fault for opening the can of worms. So, so 2 questions. Do you have to have comps? And how many comps if you do?
Right. So the answer, unfortunately, today is yes, you do have to have comps. There was a time not so long ago when comps were kind of an optional add-on. But today, more and more and more, we're seeing now that agents and editors expect it. And it's because it's part of the work that they have to do once the
Mm-hmm.
manuscript has been acquired to sell it to their colleagues and to the industry. And so it's part of the job of identifying where your book fits in the marketplace. So you do need to have comp titles, and I'll just, for those of you who may not be familiar with the term, a comp title, comps is short for comparable or comparable, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And what it means is a book that is similar to yours in some aspect, whether that be the tone or in the subject matter or in the theme or the approach. In fact, it shouldn't be exactly like yours all the way
Right.
across all of those elements. Otherwise, why do we need your book? But it is a way to show that you understand where your book fits in the marketplace and what other books similar to yours have done in terms of sales and so forth. Comps should, first of all, you should have two. You should always have two, no more, no less. Each one should represent a different aspect of your manuscript. So if you have one that reflects, your subject matter, then for your second one, perhaps reflect your writing style or your tone or theme or something like that, so that they're creating a kind of a mashup by putting them together to reflect your manuscript. And you
Yeah.
want them to be recent and traditionally published. So self-published
Mm,
titles don't work as comps, and neither do books that were published more than 5 to 10 years ago, because, I mean, preferably they should be published within the last 3 years, because the
okay.
industry is so evolving, so rapidly evolving, the children's book industry. So Ideally, pick a traditionally published title that was published within the last 3 to 5 years.
And fairly well known.
And fairly well known, although it doesn't have to be. Agents and
Okay.
editors, they know how to do their research, and they're very industry savvy, of course. Yeah, you don't want it to be so well known that it's a boffo bestseller and it looks like you're comparing yourself to, the this year's Caldecott winner. Be a little bit careful about that. You don't want to try and position yourself as the next, you know,
Right,
number
right,
one New
right.
York Times bestseller. But you do want it to have a certain track record in sales, because what you're doing is saying, look, I can show you that there's a market for this subject because this book did well.
Right,
It's
right.
about the same subject, and this is the most important part about a comp paragraph, you also must remember to highlight not just how your book is similar to the comps, but also how it's unique, how it's
Mm,
distinct from those two books. Because otherwise, again, why do we need another book on that subject, right?
right.
The ideal comp reference or comp paragraph says something like, in the spirit of X book, my book has a feisty, spirited heroine with the theme of Y book, but is unique in that and then fill in the blank so that you
Oh,
can
that's great.
position yours as, my book is doing something that these don't.
Right.
Anybody who's working on comps, rewind that
Yeah.
and write down
Actually,
that template Emma just said, because that will help you tremendously trying to
so
craft your
I
comp
have
paragraph.
two books that are sitting on my desk that I mean to send to my niece. Neither
Hmm.
of them are recently published, but I'm just going to create an example here. So we have How Did Dinosaurs Say Happy Birthday and Time for Bed, which is a classic by M. Fox. So we wouldn't necessarily use these as comps because Boffo, bestseller, Jane Yolen, Hans Christian Andersen of America, and this book is a classic and Time for Bed, been in print. But I have these, so I'm just going to give you an example of, let's say you've written a book, which by the way, I haven't seen, it just occurred to me, about how to settle a child to bed after they've had this huge birthday party,
Oh,
right? Because there are a lot of books about birthdays and birthday parties and how they get celebrated, but not a lot about how do you wind down from that and maybe even deal with the disappointment or the resistance a child might feel, about their birthday being over. So
right.
you could say it has the ruckusness, I don't think that's a word, of
It is now.
the dinosaurs but the gentle, parent relationships and the settling down for bed and time for bed, but, is unique in that it's talking about the aftermath of a birthday rather than the midst of the birthday. So that is just an example of how comp titles work,
Okay.
how they should work.
I love the improv moments that we have here on
Yeah,
the
I just
podcast.
I
Way to go,
happen
Julie.
right, like that could be a fun exercise. Like take two books and imagine that could be like a writing prompt,
That's a writing
almost,
exercise for
right?
sure.
That's great.
Wow. Come for the submission tips, stay for the writing exercises.
Right. One before we move on, I want to say one
Well,
more.
I was going to say we're going to need to wrap this up, I
Oh,
think.
oh,
So, if you guys have one last little piece that you want to, Julie, you want to go ahead and go first, and then Emma, if there's some other piece of advice you want to leave us with before we go, then
I don't know
we'll
if
do
this
that.
is big enough to be like my big advice at the
It
end.
doesn't have to be big. It just has to be helpful.
But one thing that we didn't mention about the bio paragraph that I think is really important is we often see people trying to, like, again, padding it out by saying what their connection is to the story. And I think some agents will say, I want to know why you're the person to write the story and so on. So if, as Emma said, you have a direct and unique connection, let's say you're writing about a historical event that took place where you live,
Mm.
or something. But a lot of people have more general things that they include that could
This story was inspired by my
my
dog.
my dog, or one I like to use is maybe you've written a story that takes place in Italy and you were inspired by your recent trip to Italy, and like everybody who goes to Italy is inspired by Italy. There's nothing,
Right.
or everybody has moments that their dogs, make them think of funny things, or their kids say funny things, or so if you're going to include something like that, it really has to be unique, something that nobody else but you could bring to that story. Otherwise, just don't. You don't have to say you were inspired by Italy. You just say, here's the pitch, and I'm a member of SCBWI and 12 by 12. Thank you for your consideration. The end. Let the manuscript do the work it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Your query letter is not going to, is there, as Emma said, to entice, to get agents and editors excited to read it. Your bio paragraph isn't going to sell your book unless, the pitch and the manuscript are really polished.
And that's a perfect segue to my advice, which is, we've talked a lot about the query and the components of the query and the submission package across this episode. But of course, the single most important piece is your manuscript. And you can have a terrific query, but if your manuscript isn't polished and your manuscript isn't submission ready, it's not going to get sold based on the query alone. The manuscript needs to stand up to expectation. And so that's another key thing you can be working on between now and the conference, or between now and your next submission opportunity, is really making sure that your manuscript is submission ready. And by that, we mean, as tight as a drum, as polished as it can possibly be in terms of everything from story to character arc to no typos to grammatical structure and everything else. And if you're not sure if your manuscript is submission ready or not, then bring it to a critique group, hire a freelance editor. There are a number of things you can do to help assess your manuscript's readiness. But that's
And
the
Emma, you
most
bring up
important.
a good point, and I'm not sure this is a benefit that we talk about enough with Picture Book Summit, but we have a private Facebook group where you are with other picture book
Oh,
writers. And
wonderful, Kelly.
so
Yeah,
if you haven't had anybody, if you don't have a critique group, that's a great place to at least exchange manuscripts, maybe even with one other person, or maybe finding a group in there, because you do want somebody else to look at your manuscript before you send it to an
yeah,
agent or an editor. You need an objective pair of eyes, and an objective pair of eyes who understand what you're trying to accomplish with a picture book manuscript. So,
absolutely. And you don't want to waste a submission opportunity,
right.
right? You really want to make the most of every submission opportunity you have. And fortunately, with Picture Book Summit this year, we're offering a really nice broad group of submission opportunities, but maximize every one of them by making sure that your pitch is as polished as it can be, and most of all, that your manuscript is as polished as it can be.
Right. And one other benefit of Picture Book Summit is you have 4 months after
It's until the end of the year, until December 31st
to
each year
submit.
is three.
Right. So that's another benefit of Picture Book Summit is you have 3 months after the conference to use your submission opportunities. So that means you can go through the whole program multiple times, take all the craft advice, listen to what the agents and editors have to say, go back and revise your manuscripts and your query letter to make them the best they can be before you submit. There's no rush to submit the day after Picture Book Summit ends. You get time. And I would say to everybody, whether you're submitting through Picture Book Summit or you're submitting on your own, is always take that time to
Yeah.
make sure that the manuscript is where it needs to be before you submit. And we have that built in at Picture Book Summit, but many people make the mistake of submitting too soon. I've done it. It's a learning experience, but you do lose that chance with that editor or that agent at that time, right?
Right.
Manuscript.
Right.
But we want to end on a high note, which is the great thing about submitting your work is that it is putting you in the pool of people who have the chance of getting published. And if you keep submitting, you will get published. If you don't give up, if you keep working, hopefully some of you will get responses from our agents and editors, but rejection is just part of the process of submitting and being in this industry. But if you keep working, keep writing, keep submitting, you will get published. And so you will be among this tiny percentage of people who say, I want to publish a book. You're going to be this tiny percentage of people who actually will, who are putting themselves in the position to make that happen. And that's huge.
That is, it's such an important point. And I honestly think that the statistics are that the people who get published are the people who have stuck with it the longest and kept at it. You know, they're the most likely to get published. And the people who give up too soon, no matter how talented they may be, you know, that's when you're not going to get there. So hang in. And while we've talked a lot about polish and professionalism and all of that, we also don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as we say. Don't let it hang you up so much that you get paralyzed with fear and end up not submitting at all. Better to submit and use the experience to flex the muscle, the resilience muscle, and the submission practice.
The
Um,
tenacity muscle.
the tenacity muscle, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you both. This has been such valuable advice. And we are recording this leading up to the 2025 summit. So there is still time to get a ticket if it's before October 4th. So we would encourage you to go to picturebookssummit.com and check out your ticket options. We've been talking about submissions. So there is a Summit Plus submissions ticket. So go ahead and check that out. If you're listening to this and you've already purchased your ticket, we can do an upgrade to submissions for you. If you're interested in that, you can contact us at support@picturebooksummit.com. If it's after our 2025 season, check back with us and as we get closer to October every year. We always look for great opportunities for you guys to get your work into the publishing industry, and we are here to not only cheer you on, but help educate you and improve your manuscripts and your query letters. So thank you for being with us today, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Picture Book Summit podcast. Bye, everybody.
We were saying at the beginning of the podcast that it would be a miracle if we made it through this without one of our dogs barking in the background. So there you go. That's
There we go.
Stop.
We're a dog-friendly podcast here.
We are a very dog-friendly podcast.
Fair or a conference, those kinds of, sorry, take a pause. My phone is ringing. Or
This is like a comedy.
I mean,
Very hard to keep a straight
we might
face.
need to, yeah, watching my dogs wrestle in the background. We might need a blooper reel at the end of this one.
I think we do with Duke, and every once in a while we'll see Whiskey Paw or Duke nose coming through.
Yeah.
Like they're totally just sitting there like, we can do this. We
That's
can
right. That's
break
right.
in. We're gonna do it. It's like
okay, let me just go back.
2 paragraphs. I'm sorry. Okay. You know, we should put some of this in the action.
Bloopers. We need a bloopers reel.
We need a blooper.
It's so funny.
I want to say to our listeners that what's happening, you can't see it, but we're trying to concentrate while two of Kelly's dogs are trying to break into her office. So every once in a while, we're just seeing this
Nose.
nose coming through the door. And the Great Dane Whiskies, like, we'll see the paw coming. They can't quite figure out how to get that door open, but they're really determined.
Yeah, no, there needs to be a
What was I saying? Should I just start?